This is my sword and shield. I'm here today in response to the Master's will. And I know that if I'm true, there's nothing that he won't do. We believe it. Yep. All right, all right. Well, understand you got through Psalm 11?
Yes, sir, yay!
Picking up speed, boy. Rolling along.
I tell you, just rolling along. And Psalm 11 talked about the importance of not leaving your post when the heat is on.
All right.
And that's an important thing to try to remember, isn't it? And it also talked about the fact that you had a choice, right? You could choose to be taken over by fear, which is what? Walking by what?
By sight.
By sight. Or you could choose to trust, which is walking by what?
Faith.
By faith. And I guess to say it another way, you can choose to listen to the counsel of men, or you can choose to obey what? The wisdom of the Lord.
Amen.
And that's a very important foundation for where David is taking us today, because he's all talking today about good thoughts in bad times. You know, it's amazing what the brain will do for you.
Or won't.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Sorry.
That's exactly right. And when you think about the life of David, he found himself in situations that required him to have a right frame of mind, or it could have taken him down the wrong path, couldn't it? Now, he had a little trouble going on with the folks that were taking care of Saul, didn't he? Had a little trouble there. In fact, the court got so hot he had to do what?
He had to leave.
He had to flee, didn't he?
Amen.
Praise God. Good morning. Good morning.
All right.
We're waving on it. Oh, and Skip.
No, right here. We got one. Slide over. We make room for you.
All right.
It's a shift.
That's beautiful.
A shift in atmosphere.
Yeah, we may have to just start waving.
We gotta wait. We gotta wait.
We used to wave.
You're right.
Hey. Hey.
And so the pressure didn't get off of him because he went out into the wilderness, did he? In fact, he had to hide out there, didn't he? And what was the other thing that caused David to be caught up in situations where he had to have a proper mindset? His son rebelled against him. I mean, he had to get out of Jerusalem. And so being caught up in that kind of situation, David was under tremendous pressure. But he never left his post, did he?
Amen.
His assignment from God, he never left his post. I mean, even when he was in the grace of Saul, and it turned on him, Saul still brought him in to play music for him, didn't he? What was how did he react to that? Saul, that is.
He was happy.
He was happy until he decided to throw a spear at him, right?
Well, that was because of jealousy. Scared that that David wanted to become king.
Yeah. And but David didn't leave his post, did he?
No.
Because the word said he not only did it one time, but he went back for a second time. I'm gonna wave at you, brother.
And I think that goes along with with our understanding that we have to keep faith in God because God's got a purpose for us.
Oh, yes.
Mhm. That's right. And some of his purposes for us can put us in situations that are dangerous, right? They're threatening. And I can remember, growing up, you'd hear that old comment about no test, no testimony. So it's those kinds of situations, you have to look at them as being, like David did, an opportunity for us to lean even more on the promises of God, right? And during this whole period, David is observing what's going on around him, isn't he? He's now getting himself prepared to be able to deal with the fact that everything seemed to be decaying around him. David found himself suffering from treachery. As you said, Harvey, those are the folks whispering in Saul's ear about David, because Saul's heart has now changed, right? Amen. He made a wrong step in his relationship with God and got put on the block, didn't he? So to speak.
Yeah.
And so David found himself not only surrounded by treachery from his enemies, but he found treachery amongst his friends, didn't he? And the enemies that he had were now out for blood. And so the outline of Psalms 12 has to do with verses 1 through 2. David takes his complaint before God, doesn't he? Verses 3 through 4, he called for judgment on those who were wrong. Verse 5, he speaks to God and begins to listen and hear God's response. Verses 6 through 7, God demonstrates his faithfulness to his word and to his children. And then verse 8, David begins to lament about the life of the wicked. You remember before he's talking about, now wait a minute, Lord, now how are they getting away with all this stuff? I know you're gonna take care of it, but it's hard to sit here and look at it. And we talked about that happening today, right? We see folks doing wrong and wonder, now wait a minute, I know that's not right, but they seem to be
Doing okay.
they seem to be doing all right.
Better and better.
So David's lingering question as a topic for today is, as we've already expressed, about having good thoughts in bad time, came up in Psalms 11 verse 3. Right? It said, think good thoughts during bad time. Says if the foundations, at verse 3 of Psalm 11 says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? I mean, that's a troublesome situation, isn't it? If the foundation, and the foundation he's talking about now is the church. If it's destroyed, if it becomes weak, if the water, if it becomes so murky that it looks like everything else on the outside, what are the righteous to do? And so, getting to our study, the first part of it is dealing with the righteous, right? Despairing words. Well, what does that word mean? Despairing.
Lack of hope.
Lack of hope. Desperate, right? Desperate words. Somebody read verse 1.
In the Lord,
Chapter 12.
Lord, no one is faithful anymore. Those who are loyal have vanished from the human race. 1 and 2?
Just one.
Okay.
So, the first word there in my Bible says help.
Help.
That's a prayer in and of itself. Help. One writer says, you know, help is a word that covers a lot of other things that you may be suffering from. You know, it's a quick access to the Lord. Help! I mean, if you were in a crowd and you hear somebody holler, help, does it get your attention?
Yeah.
Sometimes when I go shopping and there's nobody around, I'll just start saying, oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
I'll get security guards and everybody else.
Yeah.
That was a sign.
Writer said the word help, Lord, is like an angel's sword. Cuts through it all, gets right into the throne room. Help, Lord. Says it comes in handy in an emergency that you may be going through. May not understand it, but help, Lord. That's all you got to say. That's the full prayer. In fact, the writer says just that one word is the prayer. Help. On your job, help, Lord. In your family, you know, kids can upset a comfortable situation.
Say so.
Say so.
Say so.
Some spouses can upset a comfortable situation. Help, Lord.
Going over to the children.
I don't know anything about that.
You know, I was coming back on from Arizona a few days ago, right? The plane started, help, Lord. You know, turbulence. You know, you can take it for a little while, but after it goes for a little too long, you start thinking strange thoughts. Help, Lord. You know, even just life itself, living and dying, that's a good word to know. You know, because every situation has a beginning and an end. And what goes on in between is important in our relationship with the Lord. And if we know that we can cut through it all and get to the throne room by that one word, David is saying use it. Put it right up front. What should I be thinking about in times of trouble? I'm starting it off with help. That's pretty good advice.
Yes, sir.
One writer says help is like a small ship entering a harbor that a large ship can't get into.
Wow. That's great.
Nice analogy.
Right? Can't get in because the bottom of the ship is just too big. So that's kind of saying sometimes you don't have to spend an hour praying when help, Lord, is going to come. That's good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
You know, some folks, you know, they value getting in based on how eloquent they can be in their prayer and how long they.
You're right.
David is saying, no, help, Lord. David expresses his concern about what was happening, not so much for him, but what was happening to the godly and the faithful folks that were around him.
Right.
He was concerned that the foundation was decaying. Something we ought to pay attention to around us. And it seems that he's suggesting to us that if we see things decaying, we ought not just sit tight.
Say something, do something.
You know, what's that?
Say something or do something.
That's right. I mean, even the Homeland Security now is telling us, right?
Oh, yeah.
See something, say something.
But you can tell David is stressed out here because he said the godly are no more. I mean, gone word.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah. And there's a challenge in that, you know, because there's a certain degree of arrogance that may be associated with it.
Right.
Just because I don't see it as apparently it's not there. So what was he referring to when he said they disappeared, since you brought it up? What was he referring to?
The
Israel.
stuff,
That when they
the
vanished.
stuff that was going,
They had
now
vanished.
going on, it didn't look like godly stuff.
They probably, you know, structuring worship in a way that,
Oh, I see.
you know, keep up with the time. As opposed to, you know, am I really worshiping God? Or am I watching the clock? Or you know, choosing music within the church that may be borderline just to keep up with the times as opposed to worshiping God. You know, that kind of stuff. Those kinds of elements he may be looking at. I use contemporary kinds of things to reference for our conversation, but it's obviously that he's talking about things that the godly and the faithful people had been doing all along, but suddenly stuff is changing.
So what I'm hearing you say, it's difficult to distinguish between secular and Christian for the way the world's looking today.
Right. Yeah.
Well, even in the music, I mean, you know, you hear it on the
Yeah,
gospel,
sure.
but you hear it on the radio stations too, you say, okay, where are we?
Yeah.
Cross are you big time.
Yeah.
There was one other
Same
area
beat.
that,
Mhm.
kind of, if you go back a generation or
Mhm.
two, the attitudes were different in the way religion was couched, the way
Yes.
we worship and
Yeah.
what have you.
Yeah.
And as time progressed and we lost those values or denied those values or looked the other way.
Yeah.
And didn't respond.
That's right. That's right. And we can only imagine that during this time, it was really strict, right? Leading up to this time.
And you know, Gene just mentioned beats and so forth with music. I don't know anything about music, but right now I think it.
It's all right.
Build it for singing. But if you listen to many of the songs today, and you remember when,
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult to distinguish whether you're in church or whether you're somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's something that we've taken on, and the rationale that I hear many times is the fact that we're trying to get the youth
Mhm.
involved, and we may be, but the question still is, are we getting close to that line? Stand with God, pushing God, or are we pushing the music?
Yeah.
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 I need a sidebar.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We had earlier this morning, I was listening to a report from the Pew organization that talked about religion, and that the youth of today are religious, but they're not attending church.
Hmm.
Did anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Help me
saw
with
that.
that. Help me get that thought on the table, because you're gonna see fewer and fewer millennials in church, in the pews,
Yeah.
but they're still gonna profess a religion, and I'm not sure what that religion is.
They don't profess a religion necessarily, if I'm understanding the report correctly, as they do spirituality.
Right.
And their spirituality centers around the belief that there's something outside of themselves, greater than themselves, but not in a structured setting like the church. And where we go from there, I don't know, except that it's incumbent upon the church too to look at society where it is and to make that segment welcome into the formal setting. And it may require, they talk about contemporary services that some people lean toward. Church in many ways is looked like as a corporate structure, and they're tired of the corporate
right.
world.
That's
They
right.
don't want to come into a church that's as corporately organized corporately like it is in the world.
Yeah.
A greater, I don't know, church is a political, you think about the the Southern Baptists, and they're Republicans for the most part. So then the politics comes in. And we've got so many other issues. How do we receive gays in the church? How do we receive others who are different, immigrants who are different from ourselves? So you've got a real thing to deal with. And
Yeah.
going back to the way we were doing or are doing, it's not working.
Yeah.
Let's just face it.
Yeah.
The irony in that is that the kind of contemporary view of the church also has its own structure. You know, so while it seems like it's the absence of structure for the contemporary spiritual person, it really does have that piece there, because now you're looking at the church differently, but you have all these subsets that are part of that contemporary church.
But if you're coming in and you've got, if you look at a flow chart and your flow chart looks just like AT&T, or it looks just like some other organization, then as a person who is not Christian, but spiritual, I believe in, you know, something other, yeah, there's a force greater than myself, then how do I distinguish the
Yeah.
differences between corporate America and Christian America or church America? When I look at the overview, I'm seeing the same kind of organization.
Yeah, and that's where we come in. I mean, that's where we have to recognize that Paul gave us the example, right? Paul, in his missionary journeys, he didn't go into a community with a plan already laid out that you have to match up to. Remember, Paul said, I get down to meet them where they are, and then begin to grow them. So you have to find a way, it seems to me, based on what he's saying, to engage so that they are comfortable, and then begin to grow them. Because if you're found to, you know, if you're presenting a preset formula that before you get in, you got to match up, there's a problem with that. You know, there's a degree of arrogance that says, I'm going to preempt God, who doesn't want to lose anybody, and begin to evaluate them before I get them in to where they understand who this unknown God is. Remember, there was a great debate, right, with the Greeks, philosophers, about all of those unknown gods. Let me tell you about one.
But
Yes.
in reference to what Don was saying, our grandchildren that we kept for years were brought up in the church. And the younger one came to me and he said, you know, Mom, am I having problems? Because he's got friends, he's got, you know, they're taking classes in religion and so forth. And he said, I said, but you know what you believe, because you know we've taught you, and you've been in Sunday school and church and so forth. And he said, yeah, but, and so what I agreed to do with him, I said, you know, it's okay. You're a kid, you're learning. I said, but when you're here, we're gonna talk about faith and why we believe what we believe, and why we want to, you know, for that to be the guideline for your life. And I said, we're gonna start out with the basic assumption that there is a God who has put you here for purpose.
Yeah.
I said, and so we're gonna start looking at your purpose in life, and we're gonna grow from there. And he agreed. He said, okay, that makes sense. So you have to find approaches to these kids,
That's
because you
right.
cannot dismiss
Can't
them
be-
summarily and say, well, you know what that doesn't work.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
turn
No, it
off real
doesn't.
quick.
You can't be dogmatic about it.
You cannot. You've got to understand that in this multicultural society that we live in, they're being exposed to much more than you and I were exposed
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
I only thought it was Baptist when I was growing up in a small community. And these kids are seeing all kinds of things,
That's
and
right.
you've got to make it relevant, your faith relevant to them.
That's right, that's right. And it's that kind of attitude of, I got it. You know, I see it, you don't. That David is talking about here. And, you know, when we were saying that they've all disappeared, he's kind of saying, I got it and you
You
don't.
don't have it.
Right? And the author, or someplace else I may have read, talked about the fact that wasn't the first time that happened. Talked about Elijah, right? Who said, you know, they killed all the prophets, I'm the only one left. And God had to say to him, well, wait a minute, boy. I got 7,000 that you don't know about. Don't get too big for your britches. You don't know what you're talking about. And the same thing is occurring perhaps with David. But David is, he's restricted by, it seems to me, what's going on in Saul's court. I think that's what he's looking at. These folks who had been supportive of and responding to God's word inside of Saul's court, suddenly they're acting funny. And he's calling them on it, right? Now he's presenting it to God, but he's not just sitting still and accepting it. He's also pointing out the fact that because they're operating that way, that times were bad. What are some of the things that can make time become bad?
Drought.
Huh?
Drought.
Drought. Okay.
Famine.
According to the world standard, drought.
Well, we can put it from a Christian perspective also.
Mhm.
From a lack of godliness that you see around you.
Mhm. That's right.
Deception.
Deception.
Cruelty
Yes.
to others.
Immorality.
Bad times.
Yeah.
Economy
Oh, definitely.
from the world, right? Poor economy, bad times.
Well, wars.
Okay.
Family.
That's a curious thing, that quite often when you're involved with those kind of things, people become more religious.
Yeah,
They seek God more often when they hit bottom.
that's right.
In 9/11, when every church was packed.
Mhm.
After that, under knees praying. Next day, nobody.
Yeah.
Back to
Yeah.
routine.
So from a spiritual standpoint, as you say, when we look around and we see what looks like the decay of in relationships with God, for us, that's bad time. When we look around and we see leaders inside of the body falling, that's bad time for us. 2 Timothy 3:1 says, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. We need to know that. We need to remember that, don't we? Just another sign. When you're unable to determine simple truth in a conversation between two people, for us, that's a bad time. When we can't trust what you're saying to me. And that's where he's going with this, really. That's a bad time. Isaiah says that the righteous perish and no one ponders it in his heart. That's a bad time. When we see the righteous falling and it doesn't grieve us, that's bad time.
Bad times.
Micah said that the godly has been swept away from the land. Not one upright man remains. So what we're looking at today is nothing new, is it?
No, absolutely.
I mean, if Isaiah saw it, Micah saw it. But it ought to cause us to pay closer attention, first of all, to ourselves. Say what you mean and mean what you say as it relates to what we're responsible for in our relationship with God.
One of the other things that happened related to verse 1 are the leaders that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at today's world, a typical example within our church, I mean this structural type of aspect, if we get Harvey, the janitor, and Joe, the general, coming into your church at the same time, and there's leadership position, the chances that you guys are gonna look at Harvey, the janitor, to fill one of those positions versus Joe, the admiral or general, is slim to none. Because we look at it from the outside, status, position, and so forth. But at the same time, what we are doing many times is putting people in position that really has no business being there.
Yeah.
So they are the ones who become the termites.
Mhm.
I think you use the
Termite.
who become the termite within that
Inside.
church, which means that you eat the foundation away.
Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of what he's looking at inside of Saul's court. You gonna say something?
I was gonna say, the author on page 57 points I will not read.
Uh-huh.
One of the tragedies today is that a new generation of believers doesn't seem to know what it takes to be a godly leader. So they
Yeah.
borrow leadership ideas from secular society and choose all kinds of unequipped, unqualified people to be leaders. And that's what Sullivan was saying, and just what
Yeah.
Harvey was saying.
Yeah.
So we're following the wrong people. I mean, that's why you need to pick up your Bible and like Sullivan said.
That's
but
right.
You
Can't trust
can't trust everybody. Plus you can't, one doesn't fit all.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we got it.
But you are following the business model,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
In the structure of the church, it says
Yeah.
that
Right.
there are people who are successful.
That's right, that is business
Ergo,
model.
they'll be successful.
Yeah, yeah. But, and not to be confused, because, you know, God, he's a God of decency and things in order, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So there has to be order
Yes.
and structure.
But,
But as it relates to the kingdom, not the world.
yeah, and that hierarchy cannot be contingent upon your position
Right.
outside of church.
Yeah.
Should not.
And should not, thank you, should not be a parallel for where you
Yeah.
occupy, what you occupy in church.
That's right.
It,
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Leave it alone.
And David is, you know, he's really taking it into a one-on-one situation, right? The importance of one-on-one. Somebody read verse 2.
Everyone lies to his neighbor. Their flattering lips speak with deception.
Whoa.
Everyone.
See, and that's what you can get when you apply outside decision-making forces for what's inside the church. Is you'll end up with folks that'll say anything.
Trump. Oh, it is.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Carson.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
And so David's concern is that, look, you know, one quote says, when godliness goes, faithfulness will follow. You know, you put the wrong person in a spot. You know, if you got the wrong counsel to the king, it can be a problem.
Absolutely.
Because the king is relying on the input. You know, I mean, we see it in politics all the time, right? Where a politician at the top is surprised because some yokel out in the weeds made the wrong decision. Without checking with
But they blame it on them. They made a bad
Yeah,
decision in the
they
first
get
place.
blamed.
A wrong,
Affordable Care Act.
a wrong plug. George H. Herbert Walker Bush has just written a book. I wouldn't normally recommend it, but you need to read it. It talks about Cheney and Rumsfeld and his own son.
That's good reading.
Talk about
What's the name of it?
Talk about advice.
That's a suspense.
No, talk, I mean, when you go,
No, what's the
just
name?
Google in. Just,
Yeah.
not plugging his book,
Right.
but
There's vital information in there.
it's important.
The other thing is that,
Well,
the other part of that quote was that no fear of God, you'll then have no love for the truth.
Don't care.
You know, if you got the wrong person and they don't fear God,
Because they make themselves God.
Yeah.
They make themselves.
Yeah.
And what we have a tendency to do is change our language to justify our actions.
Yeah,
So, you know, that's where those lies come in.
that's right, that's right, that's right. So then it drives us to, at least me, to wonder, what is a faithful man? Because that's what he said, the faithful have vanished from among men. What is a faithful?
God-fearing. I said God-believing, God-fearing
Okay,
teacher.
okay,
Righteous man,
yeah, yeah.
one that is God's way instead of my way.
Hmm. I mean, that's, think about that now. What is a faithful man? Proverbs 26 says, many a man claims to have unfailing love, but a faithful man, who can find him?
Wow.
Proverbs, what was that, Proverbs?
26. Many a man claims to have unfailing love, but a faithful man, who can find him? That suggests that there's a serious test for somebody to say, I'm faithful.
Talk is cheap.
Because one writer says, it's tough because a faithful man must first of all be faithful to himself. Then faithful to God. And lastly, faithful to others. That's quite a test. If you're going to be honest with yourself. Sometimes, you know, you heard the old saying, we can be our own worst enemies. And that works both ways, that we can depress ourselves or we can blow ourselves completely out of proportion. What's an unfaithful man? I mean, that's a natural follow on. Everybody else. That sums it up.
That's it.
That's it, that's the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Move on.
Well, let me get started. If you had to put a tag on it, how about a treacherous, a person, a liar? That's not, and there's no grade in, you know, there's no such thing as a big lie, a little lie. Yeah. Or tell you one and then 2 minutes later go, yeah, I didn't really mean that. Yeah, you did. You had anybody do that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Every day.
I can't call the man's name.
Yeah.
But he was talking of Christ and wanted to be a part of the movement. And Christ says, give up your riches and follow me.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute.
He said,
Yeah.
wait, that's ridiculous.
Let's hit the pause button.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I got in the office.
Right. How about a spiteful person? I mean, what a spiteful person, they create these false impressions. You know, great conversation we're having, but they thinking, okay, now.
Stabbing you in the back.
Yeah.
Next step.
Yeah, right. They speak idly to everyone of their neighbors with flattering lips and a double heart.
Yep.
Know anybody like that?
Yeah.
In Scripture, Joab is a great example. 2 Samuel 3. Joab was the general of David's army. And he went in and badmouthed Abner. Suggesting that he was protecting David. Because Abner was wanting to join his army, leave Absalom. So he went in as an example of wanting to protect David. But he was really upset because of what Abner had done to his brother. And went out and killed him. Double hard. You ever talk to anybody like that? That you thought, he said, what? I thought he was my friend.
No, he didn't.
Oh, well, no, he didn't. Right.
They don't say didn't like we did.
Cut it short.
Cut every word short now. You notice
But I
that?
want to build a wall. I mean, a wall that keep those up, go out of here.
Yes.
What's the like, make them build it? There's a wall over in Germany, that they probably get
Make
that
them
right.
Yeah, right. So you have to,
On the way home.
you know, it's right down to a one-on-one conversation. Everyone lies to his neighbor. Their flattering lips speak with deception. Wow. That's what David is presenting to God that's inside of Saul's court. What'd you say?
That's what I wanted to say, was David speaking here. That's not a, everybody.
Not everybody. Not everybody. Not everybody.
I saw that in the scripture.
Yeah.
It says everybody.
Everybody.
Well, I'm staying with the scripture.
I'm with you.
I want to make sure we're right.
That same Joab, 2 Samuel 19, he did the same thing with another one. When he murdered Amasa. And he killed him, you're talking about backstabbers. He killed him by calling him brother and bringing him up close to him by his beard. He grabbed his face and brought him up close and then stabbed him in the back. We get that in just in conversation with folks, right? People have loving discussions with you, and the moment you go out the door, they have another meeting to figure out how to circumvent whatever it is that you agreed to in your conversation. Corporate America, that's toward the end of my career, it got to be just a spot that I couldn't deal with it. You know? And as God would have it, He arranged it so that I could get out as a drum major leading the parade as opposed to being chased out by the fire truck.
That's pretty good. That's a good nugget.
Because you know it's all trickery. You know, and that baggage is being brought into Saul's court just like it's being brought into the church.
There is that power of God that you give the example of, instead of being run out by a fire truck or being let go without severance or whatever it is. It is amazing. God knows all of that. He
Yes.
understands and knows that trickery.
Yeah.
And just like when we're born, He knows our lives. Well, He preordains what our circumstances are as we matriculate on this earth. And I find it just amazing and certainly reassuring that that keeps happening over and over again, where instead of being run out by the fire trucks, there are people who have the opportunity to make the best decision to leave or to do something else.
Yeah.
And because of God, because of His direction, and them knowing the Word and understanding what His Word says to them, they're able, from an earthly perspective, it looks like, oh, they've overcome. Well, yeah, they have, because God has conquered their circumstances and allowed them to overcome.
Yeah.
You know, it
Indeed.
just seems real powerful to me,
Yeah.
the example that you gave.
Absolutely. And you know, just if you look at the example of a basic conversation with the handyman, which I just had a day or so ago, and you ask him for a quote on a job, they give you a quote, and you say, well, no, this is the number I'm looking for. Okay.
I love it.
I mean, that's a basic example of how we've just bought into this thing. You know, I'll take you out to dinner because you're gonna take me out, you know, a week from now. Or, you know, I mean, it's just doing things with the expectation of getting something out of it.
Reward.
That's what David's seeing in this chorus. And that's a problem. For those of us who are trying to manage in relationship with God and be a reflection of Him. I mean, He gave us salvation. What did He ask for? I mean, my son has already paid the price. What is David's request in this? Somebody reads verse 3 and 4.
May the Lord cut off all flattering lips and every boastful tongue.
Flattering.
That says he will triumph with our tongues. We own our lips. Who is our master? Because of the oppression of the weak and the groaning of the needy, I will now arise, says the Lord. I will protect them from those who malign them. And the words of the Lord are flawless.
Okay.
Like silver. You said through 6?
3 and 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay,
Hey,
I
I'm
thought you said
rolling.
through 6.
He was rolling.
You go through chapter 3.
Finish up Psalms. I'm trying to get through Psalms.
Yeah. I know. Before we have to turn it over to the next generation.
No, actually, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. So may the Lord cut off flattering tongue. How do you think He might be able to do that through us? I mean,
We would speak the truth.
To speak the truth.
Truth.
Speak the truth, yes.
yeah.
They don't hear it.
Because it's okay to be flattering if you're sincere.
Yeah.
With your flattering.
Yeah.
But what they're speaking of here,
Yeah.
that many are just giving you
Just
nice,
flow.
smooth words.
Sound
Just
good.
so you feel good.
Yeah.
And whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
You lost so much weight.
Yeah, right.
That dress. You look good in that dress.
Early dress was so good.
Does this dress make me look fat?
Yes.
You know, that's the reason that the words that are good with responses like that is thank you.
Yeah.
And move on.
Show them.
If it's true, good. If it's bad,
Folks, they tell me more.
they do. I bought this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This whole thing,
You just didn't see it.
Perhaps also one of the things that he uses is the ability that true believers have in being able to detect when a lie is coming at you. I mean, you can sense it, can't you? I mean, you don't just off the top take it as such. You test it. I mean, one of the skills that I'm really thankful for, the Lord, coming out of corporate America, is being able to judge people.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
I mean, I can call it pretty close,
Well,
and then begin to test it.
Well, that's like kids, they may not have the ability to speak or say something, but young kids can sense when something's not right.
That's right.
And they approach a person and they won't go to them, but their little ears and their they already know, I don't want to be around with, like some animals, like some dog.
A dog.
Yeah, I don't want to be around them. We lose ours as we get older, but watch little kids, they'll tell you, I don't wanna be involved.
Yeah.
You know,
Go ahead, Selma.
I guess I'm like David on some sense. Then how come gobs of people are swallowed up with this?
Mm.
I mean, mega people. You got, and I mean, you. I'm not rocket scientist, but you got mega churches throwing this stuff out, and people are, they can't get it fast enough.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of almost arrogance associated with some of what goes on. My aunt goes to church and they brag. Our pastors have matching Escalades.
Wow.
Yeah, matching gold Escalades.
They have the
And
plans
they're
too.
very proud of it,
Mm.
that they're able to do this. And I'm
It's
thinking,
amazing.
and what did you do for God today? Did you
Yeah.
feed the hungry? Did you clothe some people? You know, and even if you did all that, I said, all those bricks, you ought to be feeding one person for every brick that you put in that new place. You know, it seems like it's not just one or two of us.
Mhm.
You've got a whole lot of people swept up.
Yeah.
The
That's
the
right.
microwave generation, where you can.
They're
easily
older
put
people.
it in.
My aunt is 80-some years
That's
old.
They can be the microwave generation too, if they're
And
caught up
she
in
is,
it.
I mean, they're caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really kind of what David's pointing out. You know, you really have to test it. Because if you remember in our study in John, right, 1 John, talking about false prophets. Right? And we're talking about inside the court, inside the house. In 1 John it said what? They may be of us. They may be from us, but not of us. Because if they were, they would be speaking the truth. And the kind of people you're talking about now, Zelda.
But you know, sir.
Yes, sir.
It seems like lying is becoming the norm. And people are like Zelda said, and they know, you kind of know it's not true.
Yeah.
But yet you believe it now. We just had a debate not too long ago. I'm talking with the country.
Mhm.
And they had something called fact checking.
Yeah.
And all those things, not all of them. A lot of Pinocchios.
That's right.
You're lying. But yet the country, then you had an election a couple days ago,
Mhm.
and a lot of those folks that were lying are still, they get elected,
Get
so the
elected.
public is
Yeah.
eating it up.
We'd rather hear it, it seems.
That's exactly right. Itching ears.
It's easy.
It's easier.
Yeah.
Psalm 5:9 says, "Not a word from their mouth can be trusted, because their heart is filled with destruction." We know them when we see them. Just like you said, you can see it on television, and we know who the liars are. Are we supposed to just sit quiet?
And the media, I mean, that's how they survive 24/7, by just bending lies and just saying whatever's going to draw ratings.
Yeah.
And they'll say anything.
Yeah.
So look what happened to Brian Williams. He got caught
Yeah.
in his.
God,
That's right.
It's
But there are a lot of
But they hired
Brian
him back.
Williams that are in the network.
That's true.
He's a guy.
That didn't
But I was
talk.
glad that they stood up and said he lied and we're gonna take action against him.
He's back on.
You still got a job.
But
Yeah, he's-
not that job.
Yeah,
no.
we got another.
But God gives a second chance.
The system has a way of recycling.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that reason.
Because it's you know, the enemy is out to win. You know, his thing is to destroy. What did Malcolm say? By any means necessary.
Necessary. But-
And so we got to take the risk. We have to step out there
Say something.
in the face of challenge. It's about the way we think, right? I mean, that's what we're studying, right?
Truth will make you free.
Truth make you free. And how we act. We've got to be a representation of the truth.
Right.
And it's going to cost you something to do. I was called out by a brother on some of the things that I responded to against what is certainly a lie. And it was a caution about, you know, maybe you don't want to say it quite like that. You know, maybe you want to tone it down a bit. You can't tone down the truth.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
Tone down the
true,
truth.
Rephrase it.
Right?
Truth is the truth.
The liar wants you to tone down the truth, because otherwise it upstages his lie.
Ooh.
That's right. I mean, and time in which we live now, you can catch them in a lie and
Change it.
they'll challenge you and make you feel like you don't know the truth.
You didn't hear what you heard.
Your eyes are lying to you.
Stop.
Your ears are lying.
Or your ears, right?
Put the spin on it.
Yeah. I mean, is that the time in which we live right now?
Amen.
I mean, the biggest machine of all of perpetuating lies is the media, right?
Mhm. Can't believe what you see or hear.
I mean, and they tell you up front, we here to entertain. You know, what's the old the newspaper thing? If it bleeds, it leads.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, that's what they're there for. You know, how many great stories have you seen of police officers doing the right thing and carrying out their duties in the proper way? You got to search hard to find something. Because, and we know that 99% of them are
They're good people.
good people. But you have to search hard for it. Our conversation, empty and useless words in those one-on-one conversations that we were just talking about. Empty and useless words. What do you categorize that as? Vanity. Smooth talk.
Mm. You sure look
Yeah, right,
good. Yeah,
right.
you sure look good.
Yeah. And you know, we used to brag about it growing up, right? Where'd you get that line?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good line. Flattery.
Ladder.
And what somebody talked about before, we hear it in the political world, double talk. Being politically correct.
Or spin.
Spin. Because we don't want to call it what it is, so we create these. I think the author gave an example of Arizona, what they call potholes now. What did he say?
Yeah,
Oh, it was so
military,
funny, yeah.
Pavement deficiencies.
Backlogging.
I like the, after a political speech,
Mhm.
you get the spin doctors to come on and say, I know what you think you heard, but what you really meant was this.
Yeah. That's right, that's right, that's right. And then we have boastful talk. You know, when people start off with,
I'm a billionaire.
yeah,
I can do this for you.
I
Everything,
got
I can make it all
Yeah.
better.
I went to the best, I went to the best school with them.
yeah.
I'm gonna use my own money.
I don't know about you, but I,
Yeah.
you know, it's braggart talk. It's an expression of pride. And we know what the Lord feels about pride. That leads ultimately to destruction, doesn't it? And so David has been faced, and we're going to close with this, with two things that he's concerned about inside of Saul's court, the place in which he lived. Right? Number one was Saul got after him based on lies. You know, people were coming to him lying. And his son turned on him and got the people behind him by the use of flattery. Both of those things, as pointing out in Scripture, has a net. What are those things you used to walk over the floor? It looks like it's okay, and a trap door. We have to be careful in both of those categories. Not walking into it ourselves. You know, if you can't flatter somebody and truly mean it from your heart, as Harvey said, keep your mouth shut.
Don't say
Yeah,
it.
zip your lip.
Like you see an ugly baby, just say it's a nice looking blanket.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Hey, Bob, hey, Bob.
Pray for her.
What you say,
Hey,
go close?
hey, you could've
You write that
No such thing as an ugly baby.
Yeah, yes, there is. Yes, there is.
And then the last thing is if you feel yourself about to tell a lie, do what grandmama used to tell. Bite your tongue. Okay, did I miss anything? We'll finish up 12 next week.
Make
I'm gonna figure out how to get through. All minds clear?